webinar in this week? Or no, we had one on Friday. I'm getting my days confused. It seems like just yesterday. Time is flying by. So thank you again for taking the time to join us today. Last week's session was, I hope, really helpful for those of you who are able to join. And it gave people the opportunity to have a, I think, better understanding of what assertiveness means. There was a self-assessment that you can find on the website that gives you a sense of where you feel comfortable asserting yourself and some areas that you feel that you may be able to work on and focus on. And we spent some time talking about you know, team priorities, what you want your team to really be focused on. And we heard some common themes around team members taking accountability, focusing on teamwork, you know, being motivated to do your job well. So some common themes there. So we're going to build on the learning from last week and move into talking about really creating an environment of shared learning and what that means, and by creating shared learning through feedback and coaching. So the feedback and coaching piece, some aspects of that are going to be a review for some of you who were at the Leadership in Person session in the spring, and some of this will be new for anyone who wasn't at the session. But want to just start maybe with asking a question of all of you. So what does creating an environment of shared learning mean to you? When I say an environment of shared learning, what does that mean to you?
Well, you have to communicate whatever information you get. Otherwise, the other members of your team won't be aware of that information.
Okay, good. So keeping people informed, so that information is power, and obviously, and so that they can act on it or know what's happening and know reasons for decisions, etc. Absolutely. So a big piece of shared learning is communicating. What else does having an environment of shared learning mean?
I think being open-minded to how others do things that might be even more efficient or better than the way we do things.
Okay, good. Absolutely. Be open-minded to other ways of doing things. Be open-minded to feedback, and being receptive to feedback is also part of shared learning. What else do you think? Shared learning is also about coaching and asking questions versus telling people the answer, which is what we're going to talk about. Giving people the opportunity to figure things out for themselves is part of learning, and a real important piece of creating accountability, and also demonstrating that leaders value and trust in their employees, which really impacts motivation and teamwork as well. Creating a sense of shared learning and an environment of shared learning is also about creating the ability to learn from mistakes. Right? Are people coming to you and owning mistakes and saying, okay, this is what happened and how can we make sure it doesn't happen again? Or are they being kept to themselves, right? Whether it's near misses or data entry errors, are we learning from them to, you know, patient safety errors? Are we learning with and from one another? So our research has shown that shared learning, and for those of you who have gone through the team fitness process with Tina, you'll know that one of the core elements of an exceptional team is shared learning and our ability to learn with and from one another. And it really is the leader's responsibility to create that environment. And we're going to be looking at tools to create an environment of shared learning, and so that your team members are able to stay focused on the priorities of your team and the behaviors and practices that are most essential to your team's climate and effectiveness. Okay, so that's what today is all about. So when we look at our agenda, we talked a little bit about what shared learning is, and you shared some examples, and we're going to dig a little deeper. Then you're going to do a self-assessment that's on your handout. Then we're going to talk about focusing on everyday practices. So we touched a little bit on this last week when we started talking about team agreements, which we're going to review again. And focusing on everyday practices is really about you first taking stock of what are those behaviors and practices that I see in my team that drive me crazy and are that really need to start to change. And getting very clear on that, and then using some of these tools to provide feedback and start to begin to change some of those behaviors for the better. So those tools are team agreements, those tools are coaching and constructive feedback. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing today. So to start with just defining shared learning, and we talked a little bit about this already, you'll know that you're working in an environment of shared learning when team members are voluntarily sharing knowledge and experience with one another, and which includes learning from mistakes. If you hear that kind of just organic, natural conversation happening around helping one another, oh, maybe you could do it this way, and people being receptive to that, or, I went on a course and I learned this, let's talk about how it can apply to us. Oh, I almost made this mistake and I want to make sure it doesn't happen again, so how can we fix that? If you're hearing those types of conversations, that's fantastic, and that's an indication that you're working in an environment of shared learning. When people are open to receiving feedback and providing feedback to one another, and they're open to this because they know that feedback is coming from a place of positive intent, that people are giving the feedback because they want to help this person become better, and because they're focused on ultimately the common goal of delivering the best care possible, or being, a good influence in the organization, or creating a healthy climate. So they know that it's being given in positive intent, with positive intent. When there is time to reflect on and discuss, how we work together to improve, right, our service delivery, or our team effectiveness, or our care practice. You're working in an environment of shared learning when there is time carved out specifically to talk about these things. And that's an indication of a high-performance team. And when we approach the discussion of errors in a blame-free, what can we learn from this manner, whether it's patient errors or whether it's a data entry error, right? So how are we talking about errors here? Do people feel that fingers are being pointed and blamed, or is it an opportunity to learn from the mistake? It's not about not taking accountability for it. It's a difference between blame and accountability and learning from it. So I think now is a good time to open up or turn to, let me just pull up the worksheet here. I think it's on the first page. First of all, do you have any questions around shared learning? Because I've been doing a lot of talking here.
No.
Okay, so can you take a minute just to go through this assessment and just say, yes, no, or sometimes?
Can we just hear?
Hi, sorry.
Oh, hi, Louise. How are you?
Good. I have staffing problems, so we have to replace the shift for 3:30.
Oh, gosh, no problem at all. The group is just completing a quick self-assessment on shared learning, so it should only take a minute.
Quelqu'un qui nous tend bord.
And so for those of you who have done the assessment, circle anything that you rated a no or sometimes.
Yes.
Sorry, Nicole, what did you say?
Circle any item that you rated a no or a sometimes.
Circle them? Okay.
Yeah. Or put a star, whatever you want. Yeah.
The no, c'est ça? Sometimes no. No, I said so.
So where are we at? Are we already to chat about this?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Okay. So would you give me a sense of what you have noticed about shared learning from your perspective by completing this assessment? So what do you observe about yourself once you've reviewed this? What are your results telling you? Yeah.
There's, for myself, there's basically one item or two that I have to work on.
Okay. And are you open to sharing what those are?
Yeah, make time on team meeting agenda to invite ideas. I haven't made any team meeting yet, so.
Okay.
So basically, we address the problems that we encounter every day. So sometimes meetings are a bit useless, but no, I see the value of them. Basically for the team goals.
Right. Yeah, you know, a lot of teams in healthcare that I work with don't have meetings, and don't have meetings often because the meetings that we did have were a waste of time and nobody showed up, right? And so when you're experiencing that, the question to ask yourself is, well, what was I using our meetings for? Was it the best use of time? And, you know, meetings are most productive. I mean, if you're meeting every day individually and checking in, that's great. You know, we don't need to download and update and, you know, and spend time sharing information that we can share one-on-one and passing with one another. But meetings are very productive and very essential in order to allow that time, like you said, Stephen, to check in and refocus on team goals and ask, how are we doing as a team? What's working really well? What do we need to do even better or be aware of? And to allow that time for people to celebrate, recognize one another, and raise issues, and be innovative and provide solutions and come together. So you really cannot create a sense of cohesion and camaraderie and real sense of team without team meetings. And they don't have to be every week or even every month, because I know shifts, it's challenging. But they, you know, every 6 to 8 weeks, a team meeting would be important at the minimum. Okay, because then that's when you can provide team feedback as well. Any other observations from the rest of you on areas that you could work on?
I have it's Sylvie. I have the one, find opportunities to link feedback and conversations to team goals and priorities.
Okay, good. So
sometimes.
And so this is a good way. This is were you at our session last week? I can't remember. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So last week we sort of began talking about the importance of knowing without a doubt what our priorities are and what our goals are, so that when you as leaders see behavior that is, you know, in contrast to the goal or not in support of the goal, that you can have a conversation around how that task or behavior or incident is impacting the goal. And so it's less about the individual, what the individual did wrong, and more about working together to improve the goal by changing behavior. Anything else? Any other observations?
for me. Also, sometimes I have the fine opportunities to provide coaching and or mentoring. I think sometimes we just get lost maybe into just giving directions, I guess, and we're just not necessarily coaching them to do it. So I wrote sometimes for that.
Okay, good, and that's very normal, and we see that a lot in every industry, right? I don't have a lot of time. It's hard enough to get through my day. You know, I have so many, things to do that, the knee-jerk reaction is just leave it with me or go do this, as opposed to having that coaching conversation. So it's time, and also I think comfort level with practicing the coaching too. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Thanks, Manal. Anything else?
I did mark that sometimes I address the small things before they become big issues. Sometimes I don't, but that's mostly because I'm addressing other big issues that are more pressing.
Okay, yeah.
So when they become big, we don't have a choice.
And I'm a little bit the same where, like, don't sweat the small things. Like, it's a lot of stuff that sometimes I'll find minor doesn't, for me, I'm able to put it aside, but other people, it nags them. So I have to learn that just because it doesn't bother me, it could bother somebody else. So I'm trying to work on that one, but I've...
Well, that's a really good point, because you're right. I mean, there's a balance there around don't sweat the small stuff, because we don't want to create an environment of constantly picking, right, and overly vigilant. So it's a manner of understanding and being very aware of the little things that are non-negotiable that must be addressed. The little ways in which we treat each other, in which we talk to each other, in which we treat our patients or what have you, that may seem small, but if you're noticing it once or twice, well, then maybe I should say something, So it's recognizing the small things that need to be addressed versus those that, no, I can let that go, that's not a big deal. And once we're very clear on our goals and the practices and behaviors that need to show up to reach those goals, it's easier to identify what we can let go and what we can't. Okay, great. Thank you. So on that note, moving into being fanatically focused on everyday practices. So this really speaks to what we were just talking about around the need to be very clear of what our team's goal is. So at the end of the day, what is our number one priority? What are we working towards? And once we understand that and know that, what are the behaviors and practices that need to show up every day from each team member in order to achieve that goal? And so maybe the overarching goal is deliver the best care possible, and then under that goal we have, in order to achieve that goal, we need a positive team climate and teamwork and accountability. So what are the behaviors and practices that need to show up to create that team environment that will create the best care possible? And so if you look to your worksheet, in order to be able to provide, so on page 2, in order to be able to provide feedback, and in order to know when you should step in and when you should provide feedback, the first step is getting very clear on the behaviors and practices you should be looking for, right? And is there anybody on the call who's not aware of the Feed the Right Wolf story? So this is based on feeding the right wolf, feeding the wolf of success. So we need to first understand what success looks like, what are we working towards, and then understanding all the little behaviors and practices that need to show up in order to feed that wolf of success. Because it's not one big win, one big or one big failure that creates our culture. It's all the little things that we do every day, the crumbs that feed the wolf of success. And so I'd like you to take a moment and just reflect on these questions, right? It drives me crazy when my team members blank. Because what's driving you crazy is likely impacting team performance and your ability also to lead effectively. And I can't seem to get through to my team members that blank. And the things I'd really like my team members to change are. So this activity is about getting very clear on the behaviors and practices that you feel need to change in your team. Okay, so take 5 minutes to do that.
Nicole, the
Yeah?
second one, I can't seem to get through to my team members that I'm not sure that.
That coming hour is 7:30. That coffee breaks are 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Right. What aren't they listening to me about? You know, like I'm trying to, yeah, you know, or that you need to take accountability, or that, yeah. What's not resonating with them?
Okay, thank you.
Don't have enough room to write everything.
So this is a little bit of a way to vent and get it out there too. You let me know when you're all done. About 2 more minutes, I think we have. Okay, let's regroup. So complete the sentence for me. It drives me crazy when my team members
Have a negative attitude.
Mm-hmm. Have a negative attitude. That's a good one. What else?
And several minutes chatting about non-work related subjects.
Okay, good.
For me, it's when they're not open to change. They want to stay in their little rut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the status quo, just put my head down, not change. What else?
I had two. I had our negative to change, but also when they panic without knowing the whole situation.
Ah, right. They jump to a reaction.
Yeah.
And they panic about it.
Something right away. And
okay, good. Next one. I can't seem to get through to my team members that.
I already said that. Coffee breaks are 15 minutes long.
Yeah.
that the patient comes first.
Okay, good. That the patient comes
They
first.
don't want to make a change for the patient because it doesn't accommodate them.
Right, right. Okay, good example, good example. What else?
For myself would be that they need to relax at the end of the day. Their desks are not clean. They used to have a desk clean every day before they left work, but it's not like that anymore.
Okay. So they need to take on that responsibility now.
Yeah.
Good. And then this might be a bit of a repeat, but if you could highlight the things I'd really like my team members to change are?
More teamwork.
More teamwork. Anything else?
No nitpicking.
No nitpicking.
Thinking outside the box.
Okay, good. I like that. Thinking outside the box. Good.
That sometimes the daily routine must change in order to get through the day with whatever's going on that day.
Okay. Okay, good. And so have these been, how long on, have these been ongoing challenges for all of you for a while or recent?
No, ongoing.
Ongoing. Okay. So you're about ready to deal with it and see some change, hopefully. Okay. So the goal then is to give you some tools to address those issues. Okay, so if you think back to last week's webinar and some of the emails that you've been getting, what are some things that you've learned or tools that you've gained to begin to address these behaviors that you're seeing or issues that are frustrating you within your team?
Well, we have to lead by example.
Okay, good. Lead by example, so role model the behaviors you want to see in your team. So that's about leading self first, right? Which was one of our first webinars. What else?
We have to be assertive.
Right. So assertive in what way?
Make sure we let them know exactly what it is we expect of them or what we want them to do without being like not aggressive but assertive, so that if they know exactly, and we need to also follow through, because this will show that we are assertive about this, because if it doesn't get done and we don't do anything about it, then not good.
If we don't tell them, it's like telling them you're allowed to do it.
Yeah.
That's right. So I heard two very important things there. Clarify expectations and follow through. And that's exactly what today's session is about. Okay? The need to first clarify A, what we're working towards, and B, the behaviors and practices that are non-negotiable that must show up every day in order to achieve our goals. So clarifying them, and then following through from the perspective of holding them accountable to them through feedback and coaching. And so the first tool that we reviewed at a high level last week is a tool around called team agreements that I want to come back to, because this really is a leader's, what I call a leaders and teams power tool. It's a tool that you can use to provide feedback in a very safe and comfortable way if you're not comfortable providing very constructive, difficult feedback one-on-one. And it's a tool that will allow team members to, own their own behavior to a certain degree and hold one another accountable. So let me just take a step back for a second. I don't have a slide for this, but last week we talked about the importance of scheduling a meeting with your team to come together to review your goals and focus on your team's main priorities, and B, begin a discussion around, okay, given our team's goals and priorities, what do we as a team feel, what do we think the behaviors and practices are that need to show up? So basically you're asking them, what do we need to do to feed the wolf of success? And that conversation then leads to the development of team agreements. And I'm going to show you an example of team agreements in a minute. So what team agreements are is that they are a set of behaviors and practices that your team members identify as being essential to this team's effectiveness. So you're asking the team a question in your meeting and saying, either one of two questions. In order to be an even better team, we need to do what? Or in order to create a positive and productive environment, we need to. So come up with a question that you feel works with your team, and then have them silently jot down a few things that each team member feels needs to be seen in the team, whether it's positive attitude, whether it's offering help to each other, whether it's, treating each other with respect, and then capture everybody's ideas on a flip chart and identify those that the team agrees are most important. Come to a list of maybe 5 to 7 things. Okay, so here's an example. We agree to wear our team hat and not our personal hat. We agree to treat everyone with equal respect. We agree to demonstrate a positive attitude. We agree to offer to help others when needed, to take accountability for solving problems on our own first. We agree to challenge the status quo and each other. For example, can we improve it? Why do you believe that? What's the reason for that decision? And we agree to respond to feedback in a positive manner. So tell me about your impressions of these team agreements. What would a set of team agreements like this do for you, do for your team? What would this whole process of coming together to develop these do for you?
For everybody to be on board with the team, they know what's expected of them, and they've all agreed to it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Since they all agree to it, they also take responsibility if another member of the team does not comply with this agreement.
Yeah, exactly. So they all take accountability and can hold one another accountable to these behaviors, right?
Yep.
What else do they do?
Well, they might feel important that they are part of the decision-making process. They're not just being told this is. They take part in deciding what they want to the team agreement to be.
Absolutely, right? You're inviting them, and they're becoming a very important part of creating the culture, right? You're communicating to them that the environment that we work in doesn't just happen one day. Each and every one of us are responsible for that. And so let's talk about the environment that we want to create and what we need to do in order to create it. So, and by allowing people to clarify needs and expectations of one another helps to prevent conflict, helps to increase morale and a sense of value. Because when we don't take the time to clarify expectations, but we assume our expectations are met and they're not, then we enter into conflict. Some people withdraw and disengage and get frustrated because people aren't treating each other with respect, but nobody's addressing it, or there's outward visible conflict. And team agreements are a really great way to address the challenges that you've identified just now, the things that are driving you crazy, right? A lack of teamwork, the negative attitude, not being open to change, jumping to conclusions, right? Putting the patient first, So yes, you need to first ask your team members to identify those behaviors and practices that need to change. And more often than not, they're going to identify what you already think need to change. But it's essential that it comes from them and not from you. At the end of the process, if there's anything missing, you can certainly add, you know, what do you think about this? Is this something we can add here, because I'm noticing it's not showing up enough. Okay, so it's a really powerful way to address the things that aren't working now, from the team, allowing the team to address it as opposed to you addressing it right away. One important piece about the team agreements is that they need to identify, they really at the end of the day need to only identify those behaviors that are not being consistently demonstrated. So for example, if everybody already treats everyone with respect, then that team agreement isn't working. It shouldn't be there. You should only have agreements that address things that currently aren't consistently present, because the purpose of team agreements are to change behaviors for the better and to address things that are missing or not consistently present. So this wear our team hat and not our personal hat, or wear the patient hat and not our individual hat. Okay, that first agreement speaks to the need of putting the team's needs first or the patient's needs first versus our own individual needs. That would be a very powerful agreement if that's not happening in your team. But if the team already always wears the patient hat first, for example, then you wouldn't need it as an agreement. So what are your questions right now around team agreements or comments?
I just hope that everyone in the team would take that seriously, which I feel that some people may not. And
take seriously in what way?
Like to really go by it and not just like fluff it off, you know, take it seriously. This is an agreement we have. Well, keep your end of the agreement, right?
Right. And so that's a very good point, Manon, because the way in which when people will take things seriously when what? So what will ensure people take team agreements seriously? What needs to happen?
Well, if I reinforce it and follow through, I guess.
Yeah, reinforce it when they're used, exactly when you're reinforcing them. So team agreements will not work if we come together once, define them, you know, put them on a flip chart and never refer to them again, right? So there needs to be a process by which we check in on our agreement. So if, you know, and the best way to do that is in a meeting, for example. Okay, let's review our team agreements. So just to give you an example, I'm chairing a committee right now that is a highly, highly, highly sensitive committee where we're going out into, I'm the vice chair of a board for an independent school here in Ontario, outside of Ontario in Peterborough, or outside of Toronto in Peterborough. And there's a crisis happening at the school right now, and this committee that I'm chairing is responsible for going out to every constituency in the community, you know, current parents, past parents, students, alumni, staff and faculty, to really understand the situation. And it's high emotion, high conflict, a lot of anger and distrust. And this committee is made up of 13 of us. And we come from different constituencies in the community. We all have a personal connection to the crisis. We all wear different hats and have different lenses. And so when we come together, there's often times when we will disagree or where we will take issue with things because it's a very emotionally charged situation. And so team agreements are first of all, our mandate and our goal, and our team agreements are the two tools that I use the most to bring us back on track. Without those two things, our team would be a complete disaster. And so, for example, last night at our meeting, we reviewed our team agreements. We reviewed them at the very beginning for the purpose of saying, okay, let's check in at our team agreements. How are we doing? You know, we've been going full force for 2 weeks now or for a month now. How are we doing? And it gives people an opportunity to say, you know what? I don't think we're really, one of our agreements is to be objective and throughout this process to balance objectivity with empathy and our personal bias. I don't think we're being very objective and we're getting too caught up in the emotion, and we need to talk about how to be more objective. Or I think this agreement is missing and we need to really make sure we come to a consensus tonight. So it brings people back to recognizing the behaviors and practices that need to show up for this particular team. And when we bring them out and talk about them, it is really a process of reflection and reminding this is what we agreed to, and these are really important because it helps us reach our goals. So and last night, for example, our 4-hour meeting last night, which could get heated at times, I brought out our agreements, and I said, I'm noticing that we're not hearing each other. When we have an agreement that says we will ensure all voices are heard, and we're not giving Sarah time to speak her mind. Can we all just stop for a minute and let her talk? So it gives the leader a tool to be assertive, because you have a set of guidelines that your team members identified as being important. And so they're basically giving you and one another the green light to lead by these and to give feedback on these and to use these, and they expect that. So to your point, Manon, yeah, they need to be reinforced and used. Any other questions or comments about team agreements?
I think my major thing is that some people don't see themselves, or they think, for example, when we say putting the patient first, say, oh yeah, I'm always positive to my patient, I'm always, but they forget that that texting while at work is not putting the patient first. They forget that not being positive with your coworkers is oh, I'm always positive with my patient, but I mean, being positive is being positive to your coworkers also.
So you raise a really good point about being very specific. Okay, team agreements need to be very specific, and these may not be specific enough for your team. So, putting your patient first, putting patients first has a different definition for different people, right? And so what do you mean by putting patients first? So it needs to be, we agree not to text in front of the patient or something like that, right? So it needs to be the specific behavior, as specific as you can, is best, so that everybody has the same understanding, and demonstrate a positive attitude towards our coworkers, if it's the coworkers.
How do we get people to put that on if we're supposed to let them come up with the ideas?
So you can ask questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So if somebody comes up with, we need to demonstrate a positive attitude. Okay. Well, what does that look like? And a positive attitude to who? To our patients or to each other? So asking questions, clarifying questions to get down to specifics, because if you are seeing something that you don't think is going to resonate the same with everybody, then you can ask a question.
Like, you always have those team members who will see everybody else's faults, but they never see themselves in any of the discussions you have.
Well, hopefully somebody else might, though, right? So the general question, in order to be an even better team, we need to. It's not just the people who don't see themselves in this who are answering it. It's everybody. You want everybody participating in this. And at the end, if you don't see anything, see the things that you feel need to show up, then you can add them, but it needs to be at the end. And then, it's bringing those individuals who don't see themselves in this on board through conversations, coaching, and feedback. So if there's an agreement here that's not being lived up to by one of those individuals, now you have a tool a week later if you see that behavior happening again. Just, I'm noticing that. Yes, I noticed that yesterday you were texting in front of the patient, and last week we agreed that we wouldn't do that anymore. So just a reminder that, so I'd appreciate it if you would stop texting our patient in front of our patients, because that impacts this goal type thing. We'll go through the specific feedback sheet in a minute. But this gives you a way now to clarify expectations and then follow through on it.
Would you have the team members sign the agreement?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
In blood?
Yeah, in blood. That's a great idea.
It's a great idea. Okay.
Yeah, the blood. The signing, not so much the blood, but the signing.
I'm just afraid.
I'll provide the needles.
Oh, yeah.
So team agreements work when they describe visible behavior. So to that point, like getting as specific as possible around that behavior that needs to show up so that everybody has the same picture, that everybody agrees to it, so sign it's a great idea, that they're used like we talked about, and that they're updated every few months. So when you check in, you're checking in on asking the question, how are we doing? You know, one way that team agreements are used really well in healthcare, especially for teams who don't have meetings, they instead have group huddles, right, on a Monday morning or at shift, at the start of shift once a week, where there's a huddle for 5 minutes to focus on our goals for the week or to talk about which wolf we're going to feed this week and how we're going to do that. So team agreements can be reviewed, you know, in 5 minutes in a group huddle at the beginning of the week. How are we doing? What do we need to do better this week? And every few months, they should be reviewed from the perspective of, okay, what have we accomplished? What has now stuck? You know what? We're no longer texting. I haven't seen anybody text in 3 months. We can take that agreement off because we've changed that behavior. Not that we want people to start texting again, but the agreement has served its purpose, that particular agreement. So what else do we need to work on? What can we add to this now that we've taken that off? Is there something else we need to focus on? So this is a living document because it's supposed to focus on things that need to change and not things that are already working. And I believe those, is there anybody in the room who's done a team fitness process with Tina?
Yes.
Did you do team agreements?
It wasn't called a team agreement, but it was like, what do we want to change and what do we want to continue?
Oh, the start, stop, continue?
Yeah.
And so that's a way to, sorry?
I'm thinking that team is with the kitchen staff, and that team in particular meets very regularly. We have seen a nice improvement since we've gone through the process.
Yeah.
But yeah, a few reminders is always good. So I'm thinking that it could be a step we could put at one of our meetings, having them do a team agreement would clarify for. Or give them a good reminder of what they had agreed that should stop. Right.
Because are you seeing those behaviors they agreed to stop? Are they gone or are they still showing up?
For a little while they were gone, but there's with a few of the members, a few of those things are coming back up.
Okay, so good time to do a reminder.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Where I'm having more of an issue is that I have like 8 managers with their own teams.
Right.
And then I've got my 3 maintenance guys. So I'm always thinking on different levels where I've got, this is good for my maintenance guys. Yeah, do I do this with my 8 managers or do I let them do it with their teams instead?
Yeah, you've got the I think your instinct around letting the managers do it with their team, but are your 8? So that is, yes, I would agree with you. Each of those teams need their own team agreements, and then the 8 managers. Sorry.
Because I have 2 different groups. I have paramedical and I have support services. So it's completely 2 different worlds.
Right. And so they would then have completely different agreements. I mean,
exactly.
even 2 teams within a marketing department, so same department, but one does, direct mail and one does internet marketing, but same department, would have completely different agreements. So anytime you mix people up, even if it's within the same department, because they're different personalities, you're going to have different agreements. So yes, so you would want different agreements for different, well, you would have individual agreements for each team. And then your 8 managers, do they consider themselves a team, a management team, or no?
Some do. Some, like I have 2 of those that are just one people's team. So
okay,
that would be me working with them when I do my monthly meetings with them.
right.
But so I'm dealing with like all kinds of different situations.
Right, right. So you would have to determine when these would apply. So I have agreements when I'm in a team of 2, when it's me and one other person, because we do need to clarify, okay, how do we want to work together? What's not working? So when there's more than one person, it's a team. Okay.
All right.
Okay, great. So before we move on to coaching, and this is a little bit of a review for some of you, but I think it's an important review. Do you have any final questions or comments about team agreements?
Nope.
Okay. Is there anybody there who's going to give team agreements a shot? I'm curious.
I think I'll give it a shot.
Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll try to.
Okay, great. Well, I'd love to hear how that goes. That's great. I'm excited about that. Okay. So coaching. So go back to the spring when I was with all of you before we put on our crazy hats and took some fun pictures. We talked about coaching. What do you remember? What is coaching? How would you define it?
I think it's kind of it's 2-tiered, where you lead by example, but also let the people learn on their own with certain guidelines to guide them.
Yeah,
It's
it's just not just teaching someone, it's supporting them and getting them to develop on their own also.
Okay, good. Yeah, letting people develop on their own, absolutely. So coaching is less about teaching and more about asking questions. So coaching is really all about asking questions so that the individual can think about the situation, their problem, their goal, or the issue at hand, can think about it from their perspective and come up with ideas and solutions on their own before you add to that and give them some suggestions or recommendations. So allowing the opportunity for people to think through things on their own by you asking questions first. Okay? All coaching is asking questions to help people and to have a dialogue to help people develop and understand and identify ideas and solutions. So coaching is about helping another person reach higher performance by creating a dialogue that leads to awareness and action. Okay, so there are a couple of components here. The first, the biggest component of coaching, having a coaching conversation, whether it's 5 minutes or an hour, is that dialogue. Okay, so that two-way conversation. So we're shifting from somebody coming to you with a problem and you answering with giving them a solution or directing them to do something to asking questions about it, okay, or understanding it. So that by asking questions, that individual gets clearer about the situation, builds understanding about the situation, and so do you, and then walks away from the conversation with clear next steps that they have contributed to. Okay? So most of you will remember this model, the iGrow model. Okay, so tell me a little bit, I'm going to ask, this is sort of a refresher course for those of you who learned about this model in the spring. So tell me what you remember about this model.
Well, you got the 5 steps there right on the board. So you want us to develop on each one?
Yeah, tell me. Yeah, walk through the model or an overview of what you remember about the model.
Okay, so the first part is issue. What is the issue? So you're asking your employee, what's the problem? What's going on here?
That's right.
And, okay. And once she gives you her answer, okay, well, the goal is you ask her, what do you want to do about that?
How can I help you?
Right. Getting clear on the goal. Absolutely.
Okay. And then reality. I'm not sure. I can't remember what reality is.
Explore the current situation.
You're looking at her notes.
I'm cheating.
That's okay. Yep. Yeah, exploring the current situation. Absolutely. We'll go into these in more detail in a minute. Just on a high level. And then options.
Options are, okay, well, here are the different solutions where...
Well, or more, what are the...
Yeah, what are the different solutions? And way forward, then you act on whatever decision came out of this. Usually...
What options did you choose?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, good review. Thank you. So that's absolutely correct. So what this model gives you is, a very structured approach to having a conversation. Because what often happens is a couple of things. When somebody comes to you with a problem, we either get stuck in talking about the problem and focusing on why this problem is so awful, and then we spend all of our time talking about it and not getting to any resolution or solutions or way forward, or it gets dropped on your shoulders and you feel you have to run with it. And so these 5 steps give you a very clear process for, first of all, this what's up to what do you want, like moving from an issue to a goal, is a very important piece so that we get out of the problem mindset and focusing on the problem and moving towards a more positive mindset of focusing on the goal. So oftentimes somebody comes to you with an issue and then we focus on that issue. So instead of focusing so much on that issue, we simply ask a question, okay, what is it that you want to achieve at the end of the day? Or what's the ideal outcome here? What does, what could this look like a week from now? What do you want to achieve here? So trying to understand at the end of the day we don't have a solution to get there yet, but we have a sort of a picture of that future state that we want. Okay? Then moving into the exploring piece. I'm just going to get the handout here that you all have. Okay? So some of the challenge of when somebody comes to us with a problem and we run with it, just leave it with me, I'll deal with it, is that we end up running based on our own assumptions of what the problem is. And unless we take time to ask questions and understand the situation, we may have the wrong assumption. And then that could lead to an incorrect solution or not the best solution, and we end up spinning our wheels and wasting time. And so taking time to ask questions, once you understand what they want, to explore, okay, so tell me more about this. What's really going on? How is this impacting the patient? What happened in that scenario? What have you done so far to deal with this? So understanding that not only helps you to understand it, but it also gives the individual coming to you an opportunity to reflect more on the situation. Okay? Or even asking questions, okay, well, how does this problem impact our ability to deliver patient care? So starting to ask questions around how this links to our goals. And then once you have a better understanding, and most importantly, they have a better understanding, then ask questions around options. Okay, so we know what we want to achieve here. We have an understanding of the situation. So what are some things that you can do right now, do you think, to reach that goal, given the current situation? What's one thing you could do right now? Or what are 5 things that might work? And so ask them just to suggest some options. And then you can help them too and give them after they've identified some, you can say, okay, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And then the last piece is, okay, so what one thing will you do first? And ending the conversation on a specific commitment to action. Maybe that action is, I need to go get more information, or I need to ask for help, or, you know, I need you to help me with this. You know, we don't know what that next step is going to be, but as long as there is a next step so that you have started the conversation with understanding what you want to achieve and ending the conversation with, this is the first step to achieving it. Has anybody tried this since the session in the spring? So what's preventing you from trying this?
You know what? I think I'm trying it, but it's in an informal level. You know, it's not a textbook like this, but more or less, I try to get more information out of the employee, and I try to lead them into resolving their own problems. But I don't think I was thinking of the model itself when I was doing it.
Well, that's still good though. That's great, because it's really about asking more questions before providing a solution, and asking more questions and enabling people to come up with ideas and solutions on their own first before providing yours. Because they may be the same. They may come up with what you would have suggested anyway, and what's the benefit of asking them first?
And involves them in the decision-making process.
That's right. And it builds their confidence if they can figure it out on their own.
That's right. That's right. So even if you don't follow this, you know, the IGROW, if you can simply just ask more questions and stop that knee-jerk reaction of answering or telling and directing, you know, not all the time, just a little bit to start to see how it goes, that's a huge step.
And I think there's also a little bit more ownership, like out of the employees. They'll take more accountability, whereas if they feel that they were able to resolve their own issue, then we start to feel like we can, maybe we'll lose our job. Oh, don't worry about that. We've done it first.
No one wants our job.
I do a lot of those things, and I'm still there on my job. But they solve their problems.
Yeah, I think they become more accountable because they know that they can have the solutions.
It's just me. I know it's me. What's preventing me? It's me. I have to change. I'm just a person that just, I'll do it. I'll think about it. I'm like this at home, and I'm like this at work. So I just have to let them think for themselves and do it.
But for us, with the nursing department, sometimes we need to have a solution right away. We can't have the time to go through all these steps. We need a solution like yesterday.
Right. So absolutely. And so it's maybe not all these steps. It's, okay, what do you think the solution is right now? Okay, what have you thought about this? So it's just asking a question first. Of course, in an emergency, you know it needs to be done. You know, in an emergency situation, you know, it might be different. But
and I think probably 95% of the time, the staff or the employee that comes up to you with the problem already knows the solution. They just need to have that, yes, that's okay.
Yeah.
Or
absolutely.
Yes, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, and so they will then develop better confidence in themselves by allowing them to talk through it. So and you're like, yeah, that's exactly right. I agree.
I feel they come to see me because they want to find out if there's an easier way to get out of doing something.
Right.
Sorry, you have the right answer from the start.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm working with an organization now that is in a crisis situation, like I said, and the staff and faculty, the staff is at a point where they don't want to work for their leader anymore, for the head of the organization. And one of the pieces of feedback that we're getting is he does not ask us for our opinion. We are treated with, it's his way. He makes the decisions. When we come with a problem, it's his decision. It's not ours. And so we don't feel like he trusts us to have ideas or trust our ideas in any way, because he never asks us for our ideas or our solutions. We just expect it to come to him and he'll solve it. And so it does, I'm not saying that that's any way what's happening in your teams at all. It's an extreme example. But when we feel, I'm like this too, I'm a control freak, so I want to just take things and do it because I'll do it faster and I know the solution, so it's just easier. I very much have that tendency, and it's a conscious effort not to allow that to take over. But the impact of that is, without me intending the impact to be it, is that people feel I don't trust them and trust their judgment and trust their abilities, which is not the intent that I want to have there, right? And so, but that's the impact it has at the end of the day. Okay. Any questions around feedback? I mean, around coaching?
Nope, we're good.
Okay. And so I'm not going to go through in detail this feedback tool because I think it's best used as a tool for you to use to prepare in advance of having to have a conversation, a performance conversation, or where you're providing some real constructive feedback. So it's a tool to use to really have that conversation, and it's not a coaching conversation. It's it's much more of a specific conversation where you're describing the feedback, where you're describing the behavior that needs to change. Okay? And so I'll just walk through it at a high level. We talked a little bit last week on the assertiveness course around the importance of using I statements. So when you're providing direct feedback to someone, always use I, right? I noticed that, right? I am seeing this. I want to share feedback with you on. I would like to speak with you about. So using I statements. What's the importance of I statements?
Sorry? Yeah, it's not blaming. If you say you did this, it sounds more aggressive and like you're blaming that person.
Absolutely. So it's not putting them on the defensive right away.
It shows the perception of things instead of being
fact.
It's like, yeah, it shows like I notice or I see this, saying, well, this is how it's seen by others, so that it might not be their intention, but that's how it's perceived, so that it gives them like third.
When you're showing your own accountability, it's I notice, you're accountable for what you're telling them. You're being
clear. It's not vague. It's
leading.
That's right. That's right. So it's really about, not creating defensiveness, taking accountability for what you're saying. This is coming from you. It's clear that it's coming from you. If you were to say, we are noticing, and they'll be like, who's we? And you'll lose them, right?
Yeah.
Or I've been hearing, who have you been hearing from, right? Yeah. And so choosing your words carefully, because you will lose their attention if you use certain words and create defensiveness right off the bat, and then they won't hear you.
And it's like you're blaming someone else, too.
That's right. That's right. And then the next piece that's really important is describing visible behaviors or facts as you know it, right? So this is, it's sort of to what you were saying before about putting patient first. That's a little bit broad. I do put patients first. What do you mean, right? So they're going to react to that and defend that. Or a statement, well, you don't listen to our patients. I listen to our patients. What do you mean? So instead of you know, the effect you might feel is that they're not listening to patients or not putting patients first, but the visible behavior is texting, or I notice that when a patient is speaking with you, you don't make eye contact. Instead, you're reading their chart or occupied doing something else. That's very specific behavior that they can't easily argue. They can argue you don't listen to our patients, okay, and can get more defensive around that. So you want to be as specific as possible around the behavior, and then link that why that's an issue, okay? When you don't stop what you're doing to engage with the patient or to make eye contact, that can be perceived as not listening or caring. And we really want to make sure our patients feel that their needs are #1 priority or what have you, whatever the goal is, right? So that's where you can link it to the goal. And then invite dialogue. What do you think? Tell me about, your thoughts on this. And then, sorry, it jumped a page. Then describe what's expected, okay? So you want to clarify expectations, okay? So it's describing exactly the behavior, inviting some conversation about it, and then clarifying the expectations, okay? And then if this is an escalation where, oh, sorry, somebody asked me.
Nano has a question.
Oh, yes?
Okay, so, because we have to say, like, we need to describe the problem or the issue as we know it. But, we get a lot of the time, like, another staff will come to us. Well, she's doing that, or she's not helping with the work, and, she doesn't do that when you're there, but when you're gone, she's da-da-da. Okay, so now how are we supposed to deal with that? Because I can't come up to that person and say, I noticed that you were doing that, because really I did not. It's somebody else that came and complained about it.
Right.
And she doesn't do it when you're there. So
yeah, so how am I supposed to address that? Because we get that all the time.
It's true.
And so how do you address it now?
Well, I kind of address it, well, I've heard, or some people are saying, and like I have to put the blame on others type of thing, because they did come to me and complain, but I haven't seen it with my own eyes.
Right, right. So in that instance, as specific as you can, you want to say there have been, 3 instances now, or, an instance, and explain the facts that an individual has come to me with this concern that I want to talk to you about. And this is the concern that has been shared with me. So let's talk about it. I want to understand your perspective and your side of things. I think in those situations, unless you've actually seen the behavior, you want to always give the benefit of the doubt and enter into a dialogue about it, and explain the situation and talk about it, and then and clarify expectations. I hope that the 2 of you can resolve this. I'm here to support you, or I expect this to change. So it's about being as transparent as you can without putting the other person under the bus.
It's always like she said, I said, so it's like you're hearing her story, well, no, she's doing that, and then you do what you just said, well, somebody came to me, and da-da-da-da. Well, no,
and so it sounds to me like there needs to be more accountability on the team for resolving issues amongst themselves. And so there does need to come a point where, as the manager, you clarify expectations around, I understand this can be a coaching conversation with the person coming to you with the problem, and saying, instead of them just leaving the problem with you to address with the other person, then you ask them questions about how can this be resolved? What have you done to resolve this? What have you approached this person about it, right?
Some of them can do that, and others they don't feel comfortable doing that. It depends what type of personality you have, I guess.
And I guess that's where the, like a team agreement can help, so that both of the people, the one making the complaint and the one that you have to meet with after, you can reinforce with both of them that team agreement saying, well,
It's just that you feel like one of them's got to be lying to you, right?
Would
their story don't.
Would you do a meeting with both employees at the same time?
Well, if it's a team agreement, it would be the whole team.
Well, I think there's a couple of things happening here. So the team agreement is amazing because it helps to prevent these behaviors from occurring regularly or at all, hopefully, right? So if there are issues like this around behavior and the way we're treating each other and the way we're working with each other, and you're finding a lot of complaints coming into you by team members that you have to go and address, you aren't actually a part of it or seeing these things happening, it's, he said, she said, then there's another issue happening there, right? And it's more of a teamwork, respect for one another, owning our own issues, and being comfortable to provide each other with feedback and dealing with it in the moment. There's a number of things going on there. And so it is about, yes, the team agreements are important because hopefully they will address some of the behaviors that are impacting these relationships. And then there's a couple, depending on the situation, there's a couple of ways of dealing with it when people come to you. You can coach them and ask them, what can you do with it? What are your solutions for dealing with this person? We have team agreements in place, for example. So ask questions and have them find out a way to deal with it if possible, if they're comfortable with it. If not, ask them, okay, what do you think, what would you like to see happen? And if you're comfortable with it, approach the other person, but it needs to be in a transparent way to a degree, I would recommend, without throwing the other person under the bus. But you have to get to a point where you understand the situation and are not jumping to conclusions and blaming that person. So yeah, it could be a conversation with both of them, saying this is happening regularly, let's get together and review this together and find a solution together. So there's no one easy answer here as far as how to resolve interpersonal conflicts that are happening on the team. The ultimate goal is so that individuals are resolving it within themselves, with themselves, and not bringing you into it unless it's an extreme case. That's where you want to get to. So I don't know if I helped right there. The first step is team agreements and clearing the air and being very clear on these behaviors and practices that are non-negotiable.
yeah, because we always, in all of the teams, I'm thinking, even on the floors, and you always have those individuals that will do their work properly, they'll take care of everything, and then you've got the others that are kind of the slackers, which if the bells run, they'll let, oh, the other one's going to go get it, and even if they're not busy or not,
They'll take advantage of the fact that the other one's going to go.
Oh, yeah. So it's always hard to get to motivate those people, and I think that's kind of why we started those exercises with the teams and you, because they need to be accountable for being part of the team.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
It's not always easy.
No, it is not always. It's not easy. No, it's not easy. I think a couple of things here are, A, clarify expectations and allow your team members to be part of clarifying those expectations and being very clear about the new norms that are being set. Okay. B, being consistent and following through on providing feedback and using those agreements and checking in on them. So there needs to be consistency there, that team members are now seeing you as the leader. Be consistent in your approach, that you are being aware of and and providing feedback on and recognizing and celebrating when these things are occurring, and you're recognizing and celebrating when you're starting to see shifts in the environment of better teamwork, etc., so that people also are seeing that and knowing that you're recognizing it. Okay, so there's consistency there in providing feedback and praise and recognition. That needs to be a big piece of it. And then taking time as well to come together and clarify again what's working, what's not, so that people know that this becomes part of how we're working together, that these behaviors and practices have to show up, we're all accountable to them, and the leader is now, fanatically focused on them. And this happens over time, but they need to see that this is a priority for you, that you asking questions and throwing the ball back at them to run with it and solve their own problems, especially interpersonal issues, is the new norm. So they need to see some consistency from you in applying this, and then it will become a norm. Any comments or questions about that?
Won't be easy.
No, it won't be. It won't be. You're absolutely right. It's a new item on your to-do list, and it's a new way of being for many people, right? So if you reflect on what you've learned today, what's one thing that you're going to do to more effectively provide feedback and maintain a focus on positive and productive behaviors? What's at least one thing you're going to start doing more of or do?
Getting them to find their solutions.
Okay, good. Getting them to find their solutions. What else?
Address the issues once they show up, like not wait until they accumulate and then you have to deal with a problem. If you see something that's not being done right, to address the person or the team right away and try to steer them in the right direction.
Perfect. Anything else?
I think I'm going to encourage my different teams to have agreements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Team agreements.
Good. And if you use them, you will see a real difference. That's one of the things we see. Teams that work well consistently and have consistently strong climates and are always improving and stretching themselves are teams that use agreements and clarify expectations. So it's a key tool to use. So I'm excited that you're going to give it a shot.
Well, I think like one of the issues is always accountability. A lot of the employees don't want to take accountability, but with a team agreement, it's kind of the first step towards that.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. We ended on time today. That's rare. Thank you.
So can I ask you, can you send me an email when you have a chance to which dates could we do like another coaching session?
Oh, the next coaching sessions, Menno. Yeah, that's right. We only booked one. I'll do that. I'll do that right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm